the Mount of Olives, a name that resonates through time. It stands east of Jerusalem's ancient walls, a silent witness to millennia of human history. This is not just any hill. It is a place steeped in profound biblical significance. Its slopes have felt the footsteps of prophets, kings, and the Messiah himself. Its story is woven into the very fabric of faith for millions around the globe. It is a place where heaven and earth seem to draw a little closer, a place of prayer, prophecy, and enduring promise. The olive trees that dot its landscape, some ancient themselves, symbolize peace and continuity. They stand as living reminders of the events that unfolded beneath their branches. The Mount of Olives is a bridge between the past, the present, and a future foretold. While deeply rooted in Jewish history and prophecy, it holds a sacred place in Christianity and is respected in Islam. Each tradition sees the mount through its own unique lens, yet all acknowledge its special character. The Mount of Olives calls to us, inviting contemplation and a deeper understanding of the divine plan. Long before the Christian era, the Mount of Olives held a significant place in the heart of ancient Israel. One of the earliest and most poignant mentions comes from the life of King David. In 2 Samuel chapter 15, we read of David's sorrowful flight from Jerusalem. He fled from his rebellious son Absalom. The path of his escape led him over the Mount of Olives. The scripture tells us that David went up the ascent of the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went, barefoot and with his head covered. This event marked the mount as a place of sorrow and supplication. It was a path of exile, a place where a righteous king experienced profound grief. The image of David, barefoot and weeping, ascending the mount, became an enduring symbol of suffering and reliance on God in times of trial. King Solomon, in his later years, built high places for foreign gods on a hill east of Jerusalem, which is traditionally identified with a part of the Mount of Olives. This act, recorded in 1 Kings chapter 11, brought condemnation and highlighted the spiritual battles that often centered around significant locations. These Old Testament narratives laid a foundation, establishing the Mount of Olives as more than just a landmark. The prophetic books of the Old Testament further elevate the Mount of Olives' spiritual status. The prophet Ezekiel, during the Babylonian exile, received a powerful vision. In Ezekiel chapter 11 verse 23, he describes the departure of the glory of the Lord from the temple in Jerusalem. The vision states, "And the glory of the Lord went up from the midst of the city and stood on the mountain which is on the east side of the city." This mountain is understood to be the Mount of Olives. Centuries later, the prophet Zechariah delivered a stunning prophecy that directly involved the Mount of Olives. In Zechariah chapter 14 verse 4, he foretells a future day of the Lord. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives which faces Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall be split in two, from east to west, making a very large valley. This prophecy cemented the Mount of Olives' role in Jewish eschatology, the study of end times. When we turn the pages to the New Testament, the Mount of Olives emerges as a deeply personal and pivotal location in the life and ministry of Jesus Christ. The Gospels frequently mention his presence there. It was a place he often retreated to, away from the bustling city of Jerusalem. For Jesus, the mount was not just a convenient geographical point, it was a sanctuary for prayer, a classroom for his disciples, and a stage for some of the most profound moments of his earthly journey. The Gospels record that Jesus would often spend the night on the Mount of Olives, especially during his final week in Jerusalem. The journey from Bethany, where his friends Mary, Martha, and Lazarus lived, to Jerusalem often took Jesus over the Mount of Olives. It was from this mount that he made his triumphal entry into Jerusalem, as prophesied. Beyond being a place of rest or transit, the Mount of Olives was intrinsically linked to Jesus' identity and mission. The footsteps of the Messiah on its dusty paths transformed the mount forever. Section 5. Teachings from the Summit, the Olivet Discourse. One of the most significant contributions of the Mount of Olives to biblical narrative is its role as the setting for Jesus' profound teachings about future events, commonly known as the Olivet Discourse. As Jesus and his disciples were leaving the temple, his disciples commented on its magnificent stones and buildings. In response, Jesus made a startling prediction. "Do you not see all these things? Assuredly I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another, that shall not be thrown down." Later, as Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives, overlooking the very temple he spoke of, his disciples came to him privately. They asked in Matthew chapter 24 verse 3, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" The Mount of Olives became an open-air classroom where the future of Jerusalem, the world, and his own return were unveiled. The Olivet Discourse is a cornerstone of Christian eschatology. Section 6: Gethsemane's Agony and Heaven's Ascent. The spiritual intensity associated with Jesus and the Mount of Olives culminates in two pivotal events: his agonizing prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane and his glorious ascension into heaven. Gethsemane, meaning oil press, was a garden located on the slopes of the mount. It was here, on the night before his crucifixion, that Jesus experienced profound human anguish. In Gethsemane, Jesus prayed, "Father, if it is your will, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours, be done." His sweat, Luke records, became like great drops of blood falling to the ground. Following his resurrection, the Mount of Olives was also the site of Jesus' final moments on earth with his disciples. The book of Acts, chapter 1 verses 9 through 12, describes his ascension. After giving his disciples final instructions, he was taken up, and a cloud received him out of their sight. The mount that saw him depart in glory is the same mount that, according to Zechariah's prophecy and the angel's words, will witness his feet touching the earth once more. Section 7: Echoes in Stone Archaeological and Historical Tapestry. The Mount of Olives is not just a place of biblical narrative, it is a rich archaeological landscape. Its stones and soil hold tangible connections to the past. Geographically, it is a prominent ridge east of Jerusalem's Old City, separated from it by the Kidron Valley. For millennia, its slopes have served as a major burial ground for Jews. Ancient tombs, some dating back to the First and Second Temple periods, honeycomb the hillside. Archaeological excavations on and around the mount have uncovered numerous artifacts and structures that corroborate its historical significance. Tombs like those attributed to Absalom and Zechariah are prominent landmarks. Beyond Jewish tradition, the Mount of Olives is home to many significant Christian holy sites, built to commemorate the events of Jesus' life. The Church of the Pater Noster stands where tradition says Jesus taught his disciples the Lord's Prayer. The Mount of Olives, therefore, is a living museum where history, faith, and archaeology intertwine. Section 8: A Modern Crossroads Pilgrimage, Politics, and Prophetic Expectation. In the modern era, the Mount of Olives continues to be a place of immense significance and, at times, considerable tension. It remains a primary destination for pilgrims from the three Abrahamic faiths. Jewish people visit the ancient cemetery, praying at the graves of sages and ancestors and looking towards the Temple Mount with fervent hope for messianic redemption. For Christians, pilgrimage to the Mount of Olives is a journey into the heart of the Gospels. They walk the Palm Sunday road, visit Gethsemane, pray in the churches commemorating Jesus' teachings, agony, and ascension. Muslims also hold the Mount of Olives in high regard. They too believe in Jesus as a prophet and honor sites associated with him, including the Chapel of the Ascension, which they maintain as a mosque. However, the Mount of Olives is situated in East Jerusalem, an area at the heart of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Despite these complexities, the Mount of Olives endures as a powerful symbol of expectation for all three faiths. Section 9: The Enduring Call, Watchfulness, Surrender, and Hope. The sacred timeline of the Mount of Olives, stretching from ancient kings to modern pilgrims, carries an enduring message for people of faith today. Its story is not just a historical account, it is a living call to action and a source of profound spiritual encouragement. The teachings delivered by Jesus on its slopes, particularly the Olivet Discourse, emphasize the critical importance of watchfulness. As he said in Matthew chapter 25 verse 13, "Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man is coming." The agony of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, nestled on the mount, provides one of the most powerful examples of prayer and surrender. His heartfelt plea, "Not my will but yours be done," as recorded in Luke chapter 22 verse 42, remains the ultimate model for believers facing trials or difficult choices. The Mount of Olives reminds us that true strength is found in submission to a higher purpose, even amidst suffering. And finally, the Mount of Olives is an undeniable beacon of hope. The Mount of Olives stands as a timeless testament to a story that is still unfolding, inviting each of us to find our place within its sacred narrative.